Security, we have a situation at the front entrance. Some kid is trying to get in. The words crackled through the radio, and Marcus Webb, head of security at First Continental Bank's flagship Manhattan branch, was already moving before the transmission ended. He had been doing this job for 15 years, and he knew exactly what situation meant. Someone who didn't belong. He pushed through the polished glass doors and stopped short at what he saw. A boy, maybe 13 or 14 years old. Black, thin, wearing jeans that had been patched at the knees and a hoodie that looked like it had survived several older siblings before reaching him. On his feet were sneakers so worn that the sole of the left one was beginning to separate from the canvas. He was standing just inside the entrance, clutching a crumpled piece of paper in one hand and a small backpack in the other, looking around the marbling crystal lobby with wide, uncertain eyes. "Hey!" Marcus's voice was sharp. "You lost." The boy turned to face him, and something in his expression made Marcus pause. There was no defiance there, no street-smart cockiness, just a quiet dignity that seemed out of place with his ragged appearance. "No, sir. I'm not lost. I need to speak with someone about my account." Marcus almost laughed. "Almost. Your account." He crossed his arms. "Kid, this isn't a playground. First Continental has a minimum deposit of $50,000 to open an account here. I think you've got the wrong bank." "I don't have the wrong bank." The boy's voice was steady. "My grandmother set up my account here before she died. I have the paperwork." He held up the crumpled paper, and Marcus saw that it was, in fact, official-looking, stamped with the First Continental logo, yellowed with age. But that didn't mean anything. Kids forged documents all the time, ran scams, tried to social engineer their way into places they didn't belong. "Look," Marcus said, lowering his voice to something he hoped sounded reasonable. "I don't know what you're trying to pull, but it's not going to work here. Why don't you head on home before I have to call someone who'll ask a lot more questions than I will?" The boy didn't move. "My name is Isaiah Grant," he said quietly. "My grandmother was Josephine Grant. She opened an account for me at this bank when I was 3 years old. She told me not to touch it until I turned 14. He paused, and his voice cracked slightly. "I turned 14 yesterday, and I need to access my account. Now, before we go any further, I need you to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Because what happens next in this bank is going to change everything. Not just for Isaiah, but for everyone who underestimated him. Drop a comment right now telling me what you think is in that account. Trust me, you're not going to guess it." Marcus stared at the boy, Isaiah, for a long moment. There was something about the way he stood there, calm and patient despite being treated like an intruder, that made Marcus uncomfortable. Most kids in this situation would have either run or started yelling. This one just waited. "Fine," Marcus said finally. "Come with me. But if this turns out to be some kind of game, you're going to have bigger problems than getting kicked out of bank." He led Isaiah across the lobby, past the gleaming mahogany desks where account managers sat with their wealthy clients, past the crystal chandelier that cost more than most people's annual salaries, to a waiting area near the back. "Sit here. Don't touch anything. I'll find someone to deal with you." Isaiah sat without protest, his worn backpack clutched in his lap. Marcus made his way to the office of Patricia Holbrook, the branch manager. She was on a call when he knocked, but she waved him in, covering the mouthpiece with one manicured hand. "What is it?" "There's a kid in the lobby. Says he has an account here. Doesn't look like our usual clientele, if you know what I mean." Patricia's eyes narrowed. "What kind of kid?" "Young, black, dressed like he. Just came from a homeless shelter." Marcus shrugged. "He's got some paper he claims is from us, but it looks old. Probably a scam." Patricia ended her call and stood, smoothing her designer suit. "Show me." They walked to the waiting area together, and Patricia's expression hardened the moment she saw Isaiah. He was exactly what Marcus had described, a boy who clearly didn't belong in a bank that catered to millionaires and billionaires. His presence was an insult to everything First Continental represented, to everything Patricia had built her career on. "You're the one claiming to have an account here?" Her voice dripped with condescension. Isaiah stood up. "Yes, ma'am. Isaiah Grant. My grandmother." "I don't care about your grandmother." Patricia cut him off with a wave of her hand. "Do you have any idea where you are? This isn't a community bank. We don't handle Whatever it is you think you have. I have this. Isaiah held out the crumpled paper again. It's the original account statement. From 2013. My grandmother's name is on it, and mine. Patricia snatched the paper from his hand and glanced at it. Her eyebrows rose slightly. The document was real. She could see the watermark, the official stamps, the account number printed in the corner. It was old, over a decade old, but it was genuine. Still, that didn't mean anything. The account was probably closed, or empty, or holding some pitiful amount that this boy's grandmother had managed to scrape together before she died. Sit down, Patricia said, her tone softening only slightly. I'll have someone look into this. But I'm warning you, if this turns out to be a waste of our time, there will be consequences. Isaiah sat and waited. The next 30 minutes were among the most humiliating of Isaiah's young life. He sat in the waiting area, surrounded by wealth he could barely comprehend, while bank employees walked past him with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright disgust. One woman actually moved her purse to her other shoulder as she passed, as if afraid he might snatch it. He wanted to leave, wanted to run back to the group home where he'd been living since Grandma Jo died, crawl into his narrow bed, and forget this whole thing had ever happened. But he couldn't, because Grandma Jo had made him promise. When you turn 14, baby, you go to that bank. You give them your name and show them this paper, and you claim what's yours. Don't let nobody tell you different. Don't let nobody make you feel small. Her voice echoed in his memory, thin and tired from the cancer that was already stealing her away. She had pressed the paper into his hands with trembling fingers, her eyes fierce with an intensity he didn't understand. There's more in that account than you know, more than I could ever give you while I was alive. It's your legacy, Isaiah, your inheritance. And when you claim it, you remember you are somebody. You have always been somebody. Don't you ever let the world convince you otherwise. She had died 3 days later. That was 2 years ago. Isaiah had spent those years in foster care, then a group home, bouncing between schools and social workers who saw him as just another statistic. Another black boy from a broken home, destined for nothing special. But Grandma Jo had believed in him, had believed he was destined for more. And so he sat in that bank, in his worn-out shoes and patched jeans, and he waited. Patricia Holbrook returned 45 minutes later. Her face was different now. The condescension was gone, replaced by something Isaiah couldn't quite read. Confusion? Disbelief? Come with me, she said. Her voice had lost its sharp edge. Isaiah followed her through the lobby, past the mahogany desks, past the crystal chandelier, into a private office at the back of the building. It was the nicest room he had ever been in. Leather chairs, original artwork on the walls, a desk that probably cost more than his grandmother's entire house. Sit down, Mr. Grant. Mr. Grant. That was new. Isaiah sat, his heart pounding. Patricia lowered herself into the chair behind the desk and folded her hands. For a long moment, she said nothing, just studied him with an expression that seemed almost nervous. I have to ask you some questions, she said finally, to verify your identity. Security protocol. Okay. Your full name? Isaiah Marcus Grant. Date of birth? September 15th, 2009. Mother's maiden name? Williams. Denise Williams. Patricia nodded slowly. And your grandmother, Josephine Grant. When did she open this account? 2013, when I was 3 years old. Do you know why? Isaiah hesitated. This was the part he had never understood. Grandma Jo had always been poor, scraping by on Social Security, living in a tiny apartment in the Bronx, counting pennies to make sure he had lunch money for school. How could she have opened an account at a bank that required $50,000 just to walk through the door? She never told me, Isaiah admitted. She just said it was my inheritance, that I should claim it when I turned 14. Patricia was quiet for a long moment. Then she turned her computer monitor around so Isaiah could see. Mr. Grant, she said, and her voice was barely above a whisper, I need to show you something. Isaiah looked at the screen, and the world stopped. The number on the screen was impossible. It had too many digits, too many commas, too many zeros. That can't be right, he breathed. It's right. Patricia's voice was strained. Your grandmother opened this account in 2013 with an initial deposit of $750,000. Over the past 11 years, through careful investments managed by our wealth management team, per her instructions, that amount has grown substantially. She paused. The current balance of your account, Mr. Grant, is $47,612,000. If that number just made your jaw drop, hit that like button right now. Because Isaiah's life is about to change forever, and so is Patricia's. We're just getting started. Isaiah couldn't breathe. $47 million. His grandmother, his Grandma Jo, who had clipped coupons and shopped at thrift stores and made soup from vegetables that were almost too old to eat, had left him $47 million. I don't understand, he whispered. She didn't have that kind of money. She was poor. We were poor. Patricia shifted uncomfortably. Mr. Grant, I don't have all the details of your grandmother's history, but according to our records, she made several large deposits in the years before her death, always in cash, always with specific instructions about how the fund should be managed. She pulled up another screen. She also left a letter to be given to you when you came to claim the account. Patricia reached into her desk and withdrew an envelope, yellowed with age, sealed with wax, with Isaiah's name written on the front in his grandmother's familiar handwriting. Isaiah's hands trembled as he took it. I'll give you some privacy, Patricia said, standing. Take as long as you need. She left, closing the door softly behind her. And Isaiah, alone in that impossible room, opened the letter from the woman who had raised him. My dearest Isaiah, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and you've done what I asked. You claimed what's yours. I'm so proud of you, baby. I always knew you would. I know you have questions. So many questions. And I wish I could be there to answer them in person, to hold your hand and explain everything the way a grandmother should. But since I can't, I'll do my best to tell you the truth. The money in that account is yours. It was always meant to be yours. But it didn't come from me. Not really. It came from your father. I know he never talked about him. I know your mama never talked about him either, before she passed. There was too much pain there, too many secrets that weren't mine to tell. But you're a man now, Isaiah, and you deserve to know the truth. Your father's name was Marcus Ellington III. He was heir to the Ellington fortune, one of the wealthiest families in America. He met your mother when they were both students at Columbia. They fell in love. And when your mother got pregnant with you, Marcus wanted to marry her, but his family wouldn't allow it. You see, baby, the Ellingtons are old money. The kind of money that cares more about bloodlines than love. And your mother, my beautiful Denise, was a poor black girl from the Bronx. In their eyes, she wasn't good enough. You weren't good enough. They paid her to go away, threatened her, told her that if she ever tried to contact Marcus again, they would destroy her and you. So she ran, came back to me, had you in secret. And Marcus thought she had abandoned him. His family told him she had taken their money and disappeared. He never knew the truth. He never knew about you. Your mother made me promise not to tell anyone, not even Marcus, because she was afraid of what his family might do. And I kept that promise, even after she died. Even after I learned that Marcus himself had died in an accident 5 years ago, never knowing he had a son. But here's the thing, Isaiah. When Marcus died, he left no children, no heirs. His will specify that if he died without descendants, his personal fortune, separate from the family trust, would go to charity. But you are his descendant. You are his son. And that money in the bank, I saved it. Every penny his family paid your mother to go away. I invested it. I grew it. Not for me, for you. Because it was always yours. There's more, baby. So much more. Marcus's personal estate is still tied up in legal proceedings because there's no heir to claim it. But you can claim it. You have DNA. You have documentation. You have the truth. The lawyer's information is in the envelope with this letter. They know everything. They've been waiting for you. I'm sorry I couldn't give you a better life while I was alive. I'm sorry I had to keep so many secrets. But I want you to know that everything I did because I love you. You're not a nobody, Isaiah. You are the son of Marcus Ellington III. You are the heir to a fortune that makes what's in this bank account look like pocket change. But more than that, more than all the money in the world, you are my grandson, my heart, my legacy. Go claim what's yours, baby. And don't you ever, ever let anyone make you feel small. All my love, forever and always. Grandma Joe Isaiah set the letter down. And for the first time since his grandmother died, he let himself cry. That's the end of part 1, and I know your mind is reeling. Isaiah isn't just a kid with $47 million. He's the heir to one of the wealthiest families in America. But claiming that inheritance isn't going to be easy. Now when the same family that paid his mother to disappear discovers he exists. Subscribe right now and hit that notification bell, because what happened next is where the real battle begins. Drop a comment telling me what you think the Ellington family is going to do when they find out about Isaiah. I need to call my supervisor. Patricia Holbrook's hands were shaking as she picked up the phone in the outer office. Through the glass wall, she could see Isaiah still sitting in the private room, the letter clutched in his hands, tears streaming down his face. $47 million. In all her years as branch manager, she had never made such a catastrophic error in judgment. She had treated the heir to one of the largest fortunes in America like a street urchin, had threatened him, had nearly had him thrown out. If this got out, when this got out, her career was over. Regional headquarters, this is Diana. Diana, it's Patricia Holbrook at the Manhattan flagship branch. I need to speak with someone in our VIP client services department. Immediately. Is there a problem, Patricia? There's a situation. Patricia lowered her voice, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. We have a client here, a young man, who has just discovered he's the sole heir to the Ellington estate. Silence on the other end of the line. The Ellington estate. Diana's voice had gone sharp. As in Marcus Ellington III? The Ellington family? Yes. Patricia, Marcus Ellington died 5 years ago with no heirs. His estate has been in probate ever since. If someone is claiming to be his heir, they need to be vetted immediately. This could be fraud. It's not fraud. Patricia cut her off. I verified the account personally. The documentation is authentic. The boy's grandmother set up a trust for him over a decade ago, and the paper trail is airtight. Another long silence. Stay there, Diana said finally. Don't let him leave. I'm dispatching our legal team and a representative from wealth management. And Patricia? Yes. Whatever you do, keep this quiet. If the Ellington family finds out before we've had a chance to verify everything, this is going to become a war. Isaiah didn't know how long he sat in that room. Time had become meaningless, minutes stretching into hours or maybe just seconds. He read his grandmother's letter again and again, each word carving itself deeper into his heart. His father had been Marcus Ellington III. His father had loved his mother. His father had never known he existed, and his father was dead. Isaiah had spent his whole life wondering about the man who had abandoned them, had imagined him as a villain, some heartless stranger who had walked away from his responsibilities without looking back. But the truth was so much more complicated. His father hadn't abandoned them. His father had been lied to, manipulated, kept in the dark by a family that valued bloodlines over love. And now Isaiah was the only one left to set things right. A knock on the door startled him. Patricia Holbrook entered, followed by 2 men in expensive suits and a woman carrying a leather briefcase. Mr. Grant, Patricia said, her voice carefully neutral. These are representatives from our wealth management and legal departments. They're here to help you navigate the next steps. Isaiah wiped his eyes and straightened in his chair. The next steps? One of the men, tall, gray-haired, with the kind of face that had seen 1,000 boardrooms, stepped forward and extended his hand. I'm Robert Shunn, head of legal affairs for First Continental's private banking division. And this, he gestured to the woman with the briefcase, is Evelyn Marcus, our senior wealth management advisor. Isaiah shook their hands, feeling suddenly out of place. These people dealt with billionaires and corporate executives. What were they doing talking to a 14-year-old in worn-out shoes? Your grandmother was a very wise woman, Mr. Grant. Robert sat down across from him, his expression serious. She set up your account with specific instructions. Instructions that protected your identity and your inheritance until you were old enough to claim them. She knew, Isaiah said quietly. She knew about my father, about the Ellington family. She knew everything. Evelyn opened her briefcase and withdrew a thick folder. And she left detailed documentation to ensure that when the time came, you would have everything you needed to prove your identity. She spread the documents across the table: birth certificates, DNA analysis, photographs, legal affidavits. Your grandmother collected evidence for years, Evelyn explained. She had your DNA compared to samples from Marcus Ellington III, obtained through legal channels after his death. The match is conclusive. You are, without question, his biological son. Isaiah stared at the papers, at the proof of an identity he had never known he had. What does this mean, he asked. For me? For the inheritance? Robert and Evelyn exchanged a glance. It means, Robert said carefully, that you are entitled to make a claim on your father's personal estate, an estate valued at approximately $2.3 billion. Isaiah's heart stopped. $2.3 billion. With a B. However, Robert continued, there are complications. What kind of complications? The Ellington family. Let me pause here for a second. Isaiah just found out he's entitled to billions of dollars. But there's a family out there that has already proven they'll do anything to keep that money in their hands. If you're feeling the tension building, smash that like button. Because what's about to happen is going to test everything Isaiah has. The Ellington family had ruled American high society for 4 generations. Their wealth came from railroads and steel, expanded through real estate and technology, preserved through careful marriages and ruthless legal maneuvering. They were the kind of family whose names appeared on buildings and charitable foundations, whose faces graced the covers of magazines, whose approval could make or break political careers. And they did not share. When Marcus Ellington III died in a helicopter accident at the age of 32, he left behind no wife, no children, and a personal fortune that his family had been fighting over ever since. His mother, Victoria Ellington, had expected to inherit everything. After all, she was his only surviving parent, and she had spent her entire life making sure her son stayed in line with the family's expectations. But Marcus's will had been surprisingly specific. If he died without descendants, his fortune would go to charity, not to his mother, not to his cousins, not to anyone who bore the Ellington name. Victoria had been fighting that will for 5 years. And now, just when she was on the verge of winning, just when the courts were about to declare Marcus's estate officially without heirs, a 14-year-old boy in worn-out shoes had appeared out of nowhere. She's going to fight me, Isaiah said, after Robert explained the situation. His mother. She's going to try to prove I'm not his son. She's going to try, Robert agreed. But the evidence is overwhelming. DNA doesn't lie, Mr. Grant. And your grandmother's documentation is meticulous. So what do I do? Evelyn leaned forward. First, we need to get you somewhere safe. Once word of your claim reaches the Ellington family, they're going to do everything in their power to discredit you, intimidate you, and make your life difficult. I live in a group home, Isaiah said quietly. I don't have anywhere else to go. The adults exchanged another glance. That's being arranged, Robert said. Your grandmother's letter included instructions for exactly this scenario. She set aside funds for your immediate care, housing, education, security. Everything you need until the legal situation is resolved. She thought of everything. Isaiah murmured. She loved you. Evelyn's voice softened. Everything she did was to protect you, to make sure that when this moment came, you would be ready. Isaiah looked down at the letter still clutched in his hands. Grandma Jo had spent the last years of her life preparing for a battle she would never see. She had gathered evidence, invested money, made plans, all while dying of cancer, all while living in poverty, all while pretending to be nothing more than a poor old woman from the Bronx. She had been a warrior, and now it was his turn to fight. Okay, he said, looking up at the lawyers with new determination in his eyes. Tell me what I need to do. Word of Isaiah's existence reached Victoria Ellington exactly 4 hours later. She was in her penthouse apartment on the Upper East Side, reviewing the latest legal briefs with her team of attorneys, when her phone buzzed with a message from her private investigator. We have a problem. A big one. Call me. 10 minutes later, she knew everything. A boy. A black boy from the Bronx. Claiming to be Marcus's son. For a long moment, Victoria simply stared at the wall, her perfectly manicured nails digging into the arm of her chair. Then she laughed. "Is this a joke?" she asked the investigator on the phone. "Some kind of scam? People have tried this before, you know. Con artists, gold diggers, desperate fools who think they can get a piece of my son's money by claiming they had some secret relationship with him. This is different, Mrs. Ellington. The boy has DNA evidence, documentation going back over a decade. And his grandmother, Josephine Grant. She was the mother of a woman named Denise Williams. Does that name mean anything to you?" Victoria's blood went cold. Denise Williams, the black girl from Colombia. The one Marcus had been obsessed with all those years ago. The one Victoria had paid $500,000 to disappear. "That's impossible," Victoria whispered. "I handled that situation personally. The girl took the money and vanished. There was no child. Apparently there was. A boy, born in 2009, raised by his grandmother after his mother died. And now he's claiming his inheritance." Victoria stood abruptly, knocking her coffee cup to the floor. "This cannot happen. Do you understand me? I have spent 5 years fighting for my son's estate. I will not lose it to some illegitimate child from a woman who wasn't worthy to shine Marcus's shoes. Mrs. Ellington, if the DNA evidence is legitimate, I don't care about DNA." Victoria's voice was ice. "I care about winning. Find something on this boy, something we can use. A criminal record, a history of fraud, unstable behavior. Anything that'll make him look unfit to inherit. He's 14 years old, Mrs. Ellington. He doesn't have a criminal record. Then create one." Victoria picked up her coat and headed for the door. "I want this handled, whatever it takes. Do you understand?" The investigator hesitated. "Yes, ma'am." "Good. And find out where they're keeping him. I want to know everything about this boy, where he sleeps, where he goes to school, who his friends are." She paused at the door, her expression hardening. "My son died without heirs. That is the truth, and that is what the courts are going to rule. This child is nothing, a nobody, and by the time I'm done with him, the whole world will know it." Isaiah's first night as a secret billionaire was spent in a luxury hotel suite overlooking Central Park. The bank had arranged everything: security, room service, a team of lawyers working through the night to prepare his case. It was the nicest place he had ever been, and he felt like an imposter in his worn-out clothes, surrounded by furniture that cost more than everything he had ever owned. He couldn't sleep. He stood at the window, looking out at the city lights, thinking about his grandmother, about his mother, about the father he would never meet. A knock at the door made him jump. "Mr. Grant," a woman's voice, calm and professional. "It's Evelyn Marcus. May I come in?" Isaiah opened the door. Evelyn entered, still dressed in her business suit despite the late hour. Her face was serious. "We need to talk," she said. "Something's happened." Isaiah's stomach dropped. "What?" "The Ellington family has been informed of your existence. Our sources tell us that Victoria Ellington, your grandmother, technically, has already begun taking steps to discredit you." "My grandmother?" Isaiah shook his head. "No, Grandma Jo was my grandmother. That woman is nothing to me." "I understand." Evelyn sat down on one of the sofas. "But legally, she's your father's mother, which makes her your next of kin. And she has resources, money, lawyers, connections, that she's not afraid to use." "What is she going to do?" Evelyn hesitated. "We're not sure yet, but our investigators have picked up chatter about background checks, private detectives, attempts to access your record from foster care and the group home. She's looking for dirt." Isaiah's voice was flat. "Yes, anything she can use to make you look unfit or undeserving in the eyes of the court." Isaiah was quiet for a long moment. Then he looked up at Evelyn with eyes that were far too old for his 14 years. "Let her look," he said. "I don't have anything to hide. I've spent my whole life being judged by people who didn't know me, people who looked at my clothes, my skin, my address, and decided I was nothing." He stood and walked to the window. "Patricia Holbrook looked at me today and saw a nuisance, a problem to be dealt with. She laughed at me, threatened me, tried to have me thrown out." He paused. "But I'm still here, and I'm not going anywhere." He turned to face Evelyn. "Victoria Ellington can throw everything she has at me, but she doesn't know what I know. She doesn't know what my grandmother taught me. What's that? Isaiah smiled. A small, fierce smile that would have made Grandma Joe proud. That the measure of a person isn't in their shoes, or their clothes, or the color of their skin. It's in their heart, their character, their willingness to stand up for what's right, even when the whole world is against them. He straightened his shoulders. Victoria Ellington thinks I'm a nobody. Let her keep thinking that. And when she finally realizes who I really am, it'll be too late. And that's where we end part 2. Victoria Ellington is preparing for war, and Isaiah is ready to fight. But the battle ahead is going to be brutal, not just in courtrooms, but in the court of public opinion. If you have been enjoying the video and you haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button right now so you won't forget. Like this video and drop a comment telling me who you're rooting for. Let's finish this. This is a circus and I want it shut down. Victoria Ellington stood at the head of her legal team's conference table, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. It had been 3 weeks since Isaiah Grant's existence had become public knowledge, and those 3 weeks had been the worst of Victoria's life. The story had leaked almost immediately. Someone at the bank, probably that incompetent manager, and within days, every news outlet in the country was running with it. Black teenager claims billionaire inheritance secret heir to Ellington fortune discovered the boy in worn-out shoes. America's newest billionaire? The narrative had captured the public imagination in a way Victoria hadn't anticipated. Isaiah Grant wasn't just a claimant. He was a symbol. A poor black kid from the Bronx, raised by his grandmother, shuffled through the foster system, and now fighting to claim his birthright against one of the wealthiest families in America. People loved him. They were rooting for him. And Victoria was being cast as the villain. We've tried everything, her lead attorney said wearily. His record is clean. His grandmother's documentation is airtight. The DNA evidence has been verified by 3 independent laboratories. Then find something else. Victoria's eyes were wild. This child cannot inherit my son's fortune. I will not allow it. Mrs. Ellington, the attorney hesitated. Perhaps it's time to consider a settlement. The court of public opinion. I don't care about public opinion. Victoria slammed her palm on the table. Marcus was my son, my blood. That woman, that Williams girl, she was nothing. A fortune hunter who seduced him and then ran away when I called her bluff. With respect, ma'am, the evidence suggests she ran because she was afraid. Your family threatened her. We protected Marcus. From a woman who wasn't worthy of him. From a child who would have been an embarrassment to everything we've built. Victoria's voice dropped to a hiss. And I will not apologize for that. Not now. Not ever. The room fell silent. Finally, one of the younger attorneys spoke up. There might be another option. Victoria turned to him. What? The boy is 14. He's been in foster care, a group home. He's never had money, never had power, never had anyone to guide him. The attorney's eyes were calculating. What if we could prove that he's not capable of managing an inheritance of this size? That for his own protection, the estate should be held in trust, administered by someone with experience? By me, you mean? By someone the court appoints. Someone who has the family's best interests at heart. Victoria considered this. You're suggesting we don't fight his claim, we fight his competency. Exactly. It's harder to attack DNA, but it's easy to attack a child. He's young, uneducated, from an unstable background. The courts are often sympathetic to arguments about protecting minors from sudden wealth they're not equipped to handle. For the first time in weeks, Victoria smiled. Make it happen. The competency hearing was scheduled for 1 month later. Isaiah spent those weeks preparing, not just legally, but personally. He met with therapists, educators, financial advisors. He studied his father's business holdings, his grandmother's investment strategies, the complexities of estate law. And he learned about his father. Marcus Ellington III had not been the man his family wanted him to be. He had been quiet, bookish, more interested in philanthropy than profit. He had funded scholarships for underprivileged students, supported community programs in underserved neighborhoods, and donated millions to causes his mother considered unseemly. He had loved Denise Williams with his whole heart. And in a letter found among his personal effects, a letter his family had suppressed for years, he had written about his dreams for the future. If I ever have a child, I want them to be kind, brave, willing to stand up for what's right, even when it's hard. I don't care about bloodlines or social status. I care about character. I care about love. Isaiah read that letter 100 times. His father had never known about him. But somehow, across the years and the silence and the lies, Marcus Ellington III had described exactly who Isaiah was trying to become. The hearing took place in a Manhattan courthouse, surrounded by media and protesters and curious onlookers. Isaiah arrived in a new suit, the first he had ever owned, with Evelyn and Robert flanking him. He looked different than he had that day in the bank. Older, more confident, like someone who knew exactly who he was. Victoria Ellington was already seated at the opposing table, surrounded by her army of lawyers. She didn't look at Isaiah, didn't acknowledge his existence. The judge entered, and the room fell silent. This hearing will determine whether Isaiah Marcus Grant, a minor, is competent to inherit the estate of Marcus Ellington III. The judge's voice was formal. I understand the petitioner, Victoria Ellington, has filed a motion arguing that the estate should be held in trust until such time as the claimant demonstrates the maturity and capability to manage it. That's correct, Your Honor, Victoria's lead attorney said. Our client believes that a 14-year-old boy, regardless of his biological relationship to the deceased, cannot possibly be equipped to handle an inheritance of this magnitude. The judge turned to Isaiah's table, and the respondent, Robert, stood. Your Honor, we reject the premise of this motion entirely. Mr. Grant has demonstrated exceptional maturity, intelligence, and emotional stability. He has been thoroughly evaluated by licensed professionals, all of whom have concluded that he is more than capable of managing his inheritance, with appropriate guidance and support. He's a child, Victoria's attorney interjected. He's been in foster care. He has no education, no experience, he has something more important than any of those things. Robert's voice cut through the objection. He has character, and if the court will permit, we would like to call Mr. Grant to speak on his own behalf. The judge nodded. Mr. Grant, please take the stand. Isaiah stood, his heart pounding. This was it, the moment his grandmother had prepared him for. He walked to the witness stand, sat down, and looked out at the packed courtroom. Cameras were rolling. Reporters were scribbling. Victoria Ellington was staring at him with undisguised contempt. And somewhere, he knew, his grandmother was watching. Mr. Grant, Robert began, can you tell the court about your upbringing? Isaiah took a breath. I was raised by my grandmother, Josephine Grant, until I was 12 years old. She was the kindest, wisest, most loving person I've ever known. She worked 3 jobs to keep a roof over our heads. She taught me to read, to think, to question everything. He paused. When she got sick, she told me the truth about my father, about why my mother had run away, about the money she had been saving for me. His voice cracked slightly. She spent the last years of her life preparing me for this moment, making sure I would be ready. And do you feel ready? Robert asked. Isaiah looked directly at Victoria Ellington. I don't think anyone is ever ready to have their whole life change overnight. But I know who I am. I know what my grandmother sacrificed for me. And I know what my father would have wanted. And what's that? He would have wanted me to use this inheritance to help people, to continue the work he started before he died, to prove that the circumstances of your birth don't determine your worth. Isaiah turned to face the judge. Your Honor, I'm not going to pretend I have all the answers. I'm 14 years old. I've never had money. I've never had power. But I've had something more valuable than any of that. I've had people who believed in me, who saw my potential even when the world didn't. He straightened in his chair. Victoria Ellington wants you to believe I'm not capable of handling this inheritance. But she doesn't know me. She's never met me. She's never even looked me in the eye. He turned to face her. She paid my mother to disappear because she thought a black woman from the Bronx wasn't good enough for her son. She erased my existence because I wasn't what she wanted her grandchild to look like. His voice grew stronger. But I'm here. Despite everything she did, I'm here. And I'm not asking for her approval. I'm asking for justice. My father's will was clear. His fortune should go to his descendants. I am his descendant. The DNA proves it. The documentation proves it. The truth proves it. He looked at the judge. I know I'm young. I know I have a lot to learn. But I also know that the people who underestimate me, who look at my clothes and my skin and decide I'm nothing, are always wrong. He paused. When I walked into that bank 3 weeks ago, the manager laughed at me. She tried to have me thrown out. She looked at my worn-out shoes and decided I didn't belong. Isaiah smiled slightly. But I did belong. I belonged more than anyone else in that building. And I hope, that proves something about who I am and what I'm capable of. He sat back. That's all I have to say, Your Honor. The courtroom was absolutely silent. And then, slowly, someone in the gallery began to clap. Then another person. Then another. Until the entire courtroom was on its feet, applauding a 14-year-old boy who had just done what his grandmother always said he would. He had claimed what was his. Take a moment and let that sink in. This boy, who walked into a bank in worn-out shoes and was laughed at, just stood before a court and a nation and spoke his truth. If that doesn't move you, I don't know what will. Hit that like button. We're almost at the end. The judge's ruling came 3 days later. Isaiah was granted full inheritance rights to his father's estate, valued at $2.3 billion. Victoria Ellington's motion was denied, and the court issued a formal statement praising Isaiah's remarkable maturity and composure in the face of extraordinary circumstances. The public celebration was immediate and overwhelming. Isaiah Grant became a symbol, a Cinderella story for the modern age. News programs devoted hours to his journey. Publishers offered book deals. Filmmakers optioned his story. He received thousands of letters from young people who saw themselves in him. Kids from foster care, kids from poverty, kids who had been told their whole lives that they would never amount to anything. But Isaiah wasn't interested in fame. He was interested in legacy. 6 months after the ruling, Isaiah stood in front of the newly unveiled Josephine Grant Community Center in the Bronx, a state-of-the-art facility offering education, job training, and support services for underserved youth. It was the first of many. He had used his inheritance to establish the Grant Ellington Foundation, dedicated to the causes his father had believed in. Scholarships for first-generation college students, housing assistance for families in poverty, legal support for people facing discrimination. And he had made one other decision that shocked everyone who knew his story. He had reached out to Patricia Holbrook. Patricia stood at the edge of the crowd during the community center's opening ceremony, watching the boy she had tried to throw out of her bank cut the ribbon to a standing ovation. She had been fired from First Continental within a week of the story going public. Her career was over. Her reputation was destroyed. She had spent months in therapy, trying to understand how she had become the kind of person who judged a child by his shoes. When Isaiah's assistant had called to invite her to the ceremony, she had almost refused. She didn't deserve to be here. She didn't deserve anything but contempt. But she had come, because Isaiah had asked her to, and now, as the crowd began to disperse, he was walking toward her. Ms. Holbrook. His voice was polite, neutral. Thank you for coming. I don't understand why you wanted me here. Patricia's voice was barely above a whisper. After what I did, what did you do? She stared at him. I treated you like you were worthless. I tried to have you removed from the bank. I laughed at you. Isaiah nodded slowly. Yes, you did. Then why? Because my grandmother taught me that people can change. Isaiah looked at her with eyes that held no anger, only something that looked almost like compassion. She taught me that holding on to resentment only hurts the person holding on. And she taught me that the most powerful thing you can do to someone who tried to diminish you is to show them who you really are. He gestured at the community center behind him. This place is going to help thousands of kids like me. Kids who have been told they're nothing. Kids who have been judged by their appearance instead of their character. He paused. I want you to work here. Patricia's jaw dropped. What? I need someone to run the job training program. Someone who understands what it's like to make mistakes. Someone who can teach our students that where you've been doesn't determine where you can go. He extended his hand. You hurt me, Miss Holbrook, but you didn't break me. And if you're willing to learn, if you're willing to change, I'd like to give you the opportunity my grandmother gave me. Patricia stared at his hand. And then, With tears streaming down her face, she took it. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't deserve this." "No," Isaiah agreed. "But grace isn't about deserving. It's about choosing to see the best in people, even when they've shown you their worst." He smiled. "My grandmother taught me that too." 1 year later, Isaiah stood at the grave of the grandmother who had made everything possible. The headstone was simple, exactly as she had wanted. Josephine Grant, 1952 to 2022, beloved mother, grandmother, and warrior. You are somebody. Don't you ever let the world convince you otherwise. Isaiah knelt down and placed a bouquet of flowers against the stone. "I did it, Grandma," he said softly. "Everything you planned for. Everything you prepared me for. I claimed what was mine." He paused, feeling the autumn wind against his face. "But it's not really about the money. You knew that all along, didn't you? You weren't just giving me an inheritance. You were giving me a mission, a purpose, a chance to prove that the world was wrong about people like us." He touched the headstone gently. "I met Victoria Ellington last week. Did I tell you that? She requested a meeting. She wanted to, I don't know, apologize? Explain? It was strange. She looked at me like she was seeing a ghost." Isaiah smiled slightly. "I think she was seeing Dad. She said I have his eyes, his smile. She cried, Grandma. This woman who tried to erase my existence, who paid my mother to disappear, who fought me in court for months, she cried." He was quiet for a moment. "I didn't forgive her. I don't know if I can. But I didn't hate her either. I just felt sad. Sad that she spent her whole life protecting a fortune instead of building a family. Sad that she never got to know the grandson who could have loved her if she had only let him exist." He stood up, brushing dirt from his knees. "I'm going to keep making you proud, Grandma. Every scholarship I fund, every community center I build, every kid I help, it's all for you. For Mom, for Dad, for everyone who believed in me when the world didn't." He looked up at the sky. "The bank manager who laughed at me? She runs one of our job training programs now. She's good at it, actually. Turns out people can change when you give them the chance." He smiled. "That's what you taught me, isn't it? That everyone deserves dignity. That everyone has value. That the worn-out shoes and patched clothes don't tell you anything about who a person really is." He touched the headstone one more time. "I love you, Grandma. I always will. And every time someone looks at a kid in worn-out shoes and decides they're nothing, every time someone laughs at someone for being poor or black or different, I'm going to be there to prove them wrong." He straightened his shoulders. "Just like you taught me." Epilogue. Isaiah Grant went on to become one of the most influential philanthropists of his generation. By the time he was 30, the Grant Ellington Foundation had distributed over $3 billion to education, housing, and civil rights initiatives. The Josephine Grant Community Centers operated in 27 cities, serving over 100,000 young people each year. He never forgot where he came from. Every year, on his birthday, he returned to the bank where his journey began. Not to gloat, to volunteer. He spent the day working as a janitor, cleaning floors and emptying trash cans, wearing a uniform identical to the workers who kept the building running. The first year, the staff was confused. The second year, they started to understand. By the 5th year, it had become a tradition. Other executives joined him, spending a day doing the work that usually went unnoticed, gaining a small glimpse into the lives of people they had always overlooked. The measure of a person, Isaiah would tell them, quoting his grandmother, isn't in their bank balance or their title. It's in how they treat the people they think are beneath them. He married a woman named Elena, a social worker he met at one of his community centers. They had 3 children, each of whom learned to clean their own rooms, do their own laundry, and never, ever judge anyone by their shoes. Victoria Ellington died 12 years after the court ruling. In her final months, she had reached out to Isaiah repeatedly, seeking reconciliation. He had visited her twice in the hospital, not out of obligation, but out of a desire to show his children that forgiveness was possible, even when it was hard. She left him a letter in her will. "You're your father's son. I see that now. I'm sorry it took me so long to see it. I'm sorry for everything." Isaiah read the letter once, then placed it with his grandmother's, in a box he kept locked in his desk. Some wounds healed, some didn't. But all of them became part of the story of a boy in worn-out shoes who walked into a bank and changed everything. And that is the end of our story. If you made it this far, you understand what this was really about. It wasn't about money or revenge or proving people wrong. It was about dignity, about legacy, about the truth that every person has value, no matter what shoes they're wearing or what neighborhood they come from. Isaiah's grandmother believed in him when no one else did. She prepared him for a battle she would never see. And because of her faith, her sacrifice, her love, he became exactly who she always knew he could be. If this story touched you, hit that subscribe button. Leave a comment telling me what moment hit you the hardest. Share this with someone who needs to hear that they're somebody, no matter what the world tries to tell them. And remember, the next time you see someone in worn-out shoes, someone the world has decided doesn't belong, take a moment to look closer. You might be looking at the next person to change everything. I'll see you in the next one. The measure of a person isn't in their shoes, or their clothes, or the color of their skin. It's in their heart, their character, their willingness to stand up for what's right, even when the whole world is against them.